And maybe there could be a big, you know, East Lounge, HBS kind of moment where you've got a double height space or some big expression to the outside.
Yeah, we had that at one point, and as the program, as the building squeezes, the program occupies more and more of that, and it's less and less transparent, so we try to restore some of that character.
Because there's continuous sort of tissue around the outside, but I think some big payoff would be really strong.
We're hoping to occupy a lot of that orange space with program. You know,
So that's gonna be like soft seating or
Yeah.
kind of
For
thing? There's a
football
lot of it.
Right.
And, I mean, it's not, I like that kind of stuff, but sometimes it ends up just being unused.
It's also a dense building, you know, there are a couple thousand people, so.
Rob, programmatically, is this building meant to have a disproportionate amount of public space to counterbalance the student center?
The rest of the campus.
So it becomes a second sort of anchor point of social activity?
Yeah, and we just have to dispose it in the way that's most effective to the building.
And then so in a final rendering, there'd be lots of seating in here.
Right.
Okay, that's one of the things
I
that's
mean,
for
this has
me.
about 1/10 of the activity. You know, this classroom is
Yeah.
unoccupied, and all the student success hasn't been developed yet. It's one of the, you know, again, it's a pitfall of doing this polished of a rendering this early. You know, but I think it gave us a great. What's really great about this is the daylight. That wasn't kind of photoshopped. You know, that was what came out of the model. At what time of day, Kate?
3:30
3:30.
in the summer.
Which isn't too surprising. It's western facing. You know, so.
I think though, the fact that it is a very high quality rendering, even though many things aren't resolved yet, help make the client extremely excited
Yeah.
and really enthusiastic about Goody Clancy and our vision. And so I see much more positive than negative.
No, you're
to
right.
all of
And you
that.
get a lot of buy-in early from heavy hitters.
Right.
And when you go back to the VE table, right, you already have sold some people on the character of the new space. So it is really going to be important in that way.
I think they're a useful internal tool also. I mean, you say for the risk of doing a polished rendering, but it helps open up
Yeah.
a lot of things you think you haven't resolved yet or what you think is working. I think it's still a useful tool for us, or for you guys.
And as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about, you know, because we're doing Lab of the Year for ISC right now. And I'm thinking that this is part of Rob's vocabulary of different height spaces, all sort of folding in and intersecting with each other. And it works so well at the ISC that it's going to be amazing here too.
Can we revisit? So Jefferson, I think the point you were making is that like in this rendering there's a triple height space, and then on the outside edge of the jewel there are all one-story spaces. So for that, like could the program that's in that volume kind of shift in a way, maybe to the north, that would allow this space to be like experienced from the outside? Like maybe the cafe becomes kind of an object within the jewel, and these other kind of miscellaneous program elements disengage from that a little bit, kind of shy away.
So you don't go to the second floor? I'm not sure.
So
I think they are disengaged because they're not on the exterior wall.
I can't quite remember.
This one?
Yeah, so like if, like the learning research, the math research, all that's kind of, and this classroom at the end, all of it's kind of taking up this connection that could happen to the outside, if that makes sense.
Maybe that third-story space could actually spill out onto the exterior too,
Yeah,
instead
exactly.
of being fully
Receive it from the outside.
inside.
Yeah.
Reinforce that spine or the.
Whether that's at the classroom to the south or this big cross section.
Yeah.
It's,
Right.
once you gotta figure out the primary dominant gesture or axis, but then some expression of that magic inside towards towards the exterior, so you get that oh wow moment as you approach the
I
building.
mean, in some ways,
Yeah.
if this goes away or slides down, you'd be able
Yeah.
to see
Yeah, exactly.
straight through.
It's-
But that's 1,500 square feet program, we've got to put
But
somewhere else.
could the learning research space like go north of virtual math? Like, I understand it's a simplistic way to say, oh, you need the big volume everywhere
Mm.
because you have program to fit, but it could be sacrificed somewhere else so that
Yeah,
happen.
at one point, we actually had it, you know, so when you look back from the stair, you see out across the space. And, you know, this'll, maybe this room becomes more transparent, you know, it's glazed on this side and this side, and you see through it, but it doesn't go away. It'd be different if it was
Yeah, they still haven't,
accessible.
I don't think they know what that space is yet. Like, virtual math, for example, was their version of Blackboard, where you could, I don't think people use that.
Self-paced study.
Could you talk for a second, just if you were to pick one axis for the building, which one is it? Is it the one to the west or the south? The primary, like, big gesture? Because right now it seems like it's a little both, and it would really, I think it would help clear the diagram if there's.
No, that's
Yeah.
what we're struggling with, and then,
Yeah.
this are kind of stumbled upon the fact that the bar building is that element that frames the quad. I think that's a really nice concept, so that even muddies the water more, if you will, right?
Is that,
Yeah, I think they have two different characters. You know, this is smaller and continuous, this is wider and looser and less defined, equally defined on each side. I mean, I think it's gotta have both, and we've gotta find a way for both to work at the same time. But
But I
it's
think
the
you have to
HBS
get
problem.
the classroom and like that program out of that slot. It's like right smack in the middle of where where that access is. And
Yeah,
the
the
doors
great-
don't
the great-
really align
Yeah, no,
either down below.
We're in the middle of things with the doors, and it would be great, and maybe we could wall off that classroom and
And maybe it means that you have to fill out the full bar, like the classrooms don't really do that yet. You know, like maybe the seminar, you know, and the GS or
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
come down so that you're actually sort of filling out that bar and defining that edge.
Like you are filling the bar on the top
Right.
part.
Yes.
The classrooms come all the way to the edge of the bar.
Because you already have sort of circulation space and everything between that colonnade, couldn't you start to reinforce that idea there?
It seems as though some of the early diagrams were incredibly clear, and maybe it's gotten a little muddier with
Sure.
value engineering and program. But one of the compelling diagrams was really about the multiple parts and about this throughway with the stair that brought you from this incredibly important outside space up through the building. And I, I mean, right there, well, the lovely arrow that flows up and then, but it seems like in the later plans, that has actually been lost.
Yeah.
Even in the rendering, the stair is no longer a through element, it has a seated area that comes down to a completely different kind of stair. And which is more of a platform, which doesn't lead anywhere. And so you've lost that lovely sort of movement, which is such a strong part of most of your designs.
I mean, this diagram, I think, has the same problem you're describing with the axis, or it's starting to suggest it exists, right? Because of the stairs intersecting that.
but so,
But this is really facing west, facing towards the quad. This is a singular.
if you said the Harvard, the HBS problem, which
Yeah.
we definitely tackled this, or dealt with this a lot, and I think our solution, which seems pretty successful when you go into the spaces, there's a clear axis down on the west, but the space when you get inside the hub is running the opposite direction. So it's like the overall reading of the massing is running in one direction, and then the interior space is running in the opposite direction.
But Steve, now go to the rendering. The one that with the multi-height spaces, which it makes it, which is signature, Rob, and signature some of our buildings. Well, look at how, this one implies that stair really is a through passage and it really leads you up through the building, but now go to the rendering of the,
Right, where it folds back.
Yeah, and it's just
The-
shoved back in the.
I mean, even these early renderings had that, it was a much more,
fluid. And so then,
Go back.
the next one actually. So suddenly you get this movement, which isn't movement anymore. It's one thing and then another thing, maybe that's just the light, but it no longer feels like something that really runs through the space to me. And then the floor plans indicate that it doesn't. It comes down and becomes a different creature, which to me is a different partie, which might be okay, but you just have to decide which partie you really want.
Yeah,
Are you suggesting that, I think this is blasphemy to say in this group maybe, but like, could the stair just be a stair? I mean, there are places to say, or a space just be a space, Rob, I'm leaving you with that. But we put this seating in all of our stairs, and there are tons of other places to sit. We want to activate the quad, so we want people to sit on the first floor, and we want people to see the activity and the volume, so we want people to sit against the window on the second floor. So I think that there's something really amazing in these diagrams that all show this like simple flowing stair, right?
the university is in cahoots with Steelcase and put us all on a private jet out to their headquarters, and they brought us to Grand Rapids, the university there, where they had a space like this, and it was the most popular space, and all the faculty and the dean and the provost, they loved it. And it was successful, not because it was just like soft seating, Libby, kind of like what we were thinking in the past at Worcester, but it had technology there, and they married the technology with the furniture, and I'm not a Steelcase salesman, believe me,
But it was a nice guess.
but it worked, and it was filled, and they had these 2- and 3-story spaces that you thought acoustics would be a nightmare. They weren't. Everybody was, and there was like 2 people seating. There was these little niches that people could study in. There were 4, 8-person. There was just a variety of high seating, low seating, standing, and it worked. And that's kind of, I think, this place has that opportunity. So I don't see ever enough seating.
The seating stair thing is, but I think she's saying maybe this stair, because there's so many other places to hang out, doesn't need to be a seating stair. At Harvard, it's the core thing.
But how does that strengthen our
I'm not sure
concept?
whether that's fundamental. I mean, I think a fundamental question I have is, in this version, you come up the stairs, you land on the second floor, and then you turn back. So that this is the version that's saying all circulation is concentrated around the hub, around the 3-story space. That's different than that earlier section where you climbed through the building, you came out the other side, and then you turned around and went back. And I don't know which is better. The idea of this is concentrate as much activity around this 3-story or 2-story, 3-story space as you possibly can, versus pulling people all the way through the building and out the other side. This is more efficient. You get to use that you get more program and less circulation. But listen, you might go back to one of the earlier sections, 5 or 6 slides back. Keep going. If you go back. This one, where you come through the building, you come up, you go all the way through the building, you come out on the other side. I don't know which is
You're
better.
saying even when you go up to the next floor, you're still moving in the same direction,
Right.
as opposed to
And you
switching
come out on
back.
the other side of the building.
Yeah.
So you're saying now that the current design, you get up to the top of the flowing
You get
stair,
up,
and then you
turn,
flow
and
back,
yeah,
so
and
you're
you look
always
back
looking
over.
down on the third
Yeah.
story, on the
Yeah.
3-story.
You know, are you better off concentrating that circulation activity? Are you better off dragging people through the building? I don't know.
I think your choice of words says
Dragging.
I think we know where there's our news.
Should we move on to the site a little bit and talk a little bit about the site?
No, I don't know how much time we have, but Jose, I think you have questions.
Maybe I missed something, but why is the building round?
because it's a way of making that piece of the building different from the space-defining part of the building.
But I feel that all the early renderings in this section, you have that flat plane, which makes all your diagrams super clear because you're seeing the plane through the building, which accentuates the stairs, which moves people across the
Right,
building.
you get
But
closer
then
to it.
once you add this curve element, your eye doesn't go seeing like a plate, like a piece of glass, you're actually seeing the curvature of the
The
building,
volume,
and then you put
yeah,
a program
yeah.
in front of that, which blocks
Mhm.
the overall concept, blends the concept.
Yeah, and the other issue with that was that U of L is concerned that by having a bar that came across the whole front of the building, we were impinging too much on the courtyard, that it was hard to circulate around the building. So the curve form was a response to that. And you'll see we actually went back on the ground floor to being orthogonal, so you do see through it, that the curve volume is only on the upper floors. That's the thinking behind it. Aaron?
So, I guess just to sort of respond, I guess, to site landscape and then also this sort of idea of the curve, I do actually kind of appreciate the fact that there are these two very different forms, like there's the rectilinear bar and then there's this curved form, and I think that Jeff's point just about the rendering, like, yeah, it's an amazing design tool and it calls up these reasons why when you look at that, you know, the central atrium space, to see it kind of rendered in those interior parts of that bar being rendered as like gypsum, like we want it to be brick, because it's not that, you know, the curvaceous parts of the building and these rectilinear parts can't coexist, but that they should sort of become almost like enamored with their own forms. And so one of the things just in working on this project, I think what I feel would solve some of these larger site landscape issue questions about, like, you know, they don't want you to take up so much of the quad, and yet we have, you know, now this curvaceous part that is intended to be this interior quad because it gets incredibly hot, and, you know, you still have these, you know, Pietro Belushi-esque type, you know, orthogonal, you know, corners on the ground floor to really sort of like hold and like capture and provide spaces that are going to be really wonderful to sort of be outside but still have, you know, some sense of being a part of the interior public space. But I wonder if, can you go to the floor plan? How many thousands of people did you say were supposed to be here?
Probably over 1,000 people in the classroom, so 1,000 coming, 1,000 going, and each class change.
Yeah, so it just, the thing that like really struck me is that you have this really potentially beautiful way of creating a building that isn't about staid, solid objects that are just divorced from one another, but really that they can work together. And I think that you're trying to make a building that is ultimately impacting the quad. So having a building that's divorced from the quad is something that we don't want to do. And so I think that if you take those sort of elements that you found maybe more enticing about the quad forming this sort of plane that then washes up through the building, and that it moves from, you know, what could potentially be a very hot or cold exterior environment moving into an interior environment that still feels like it's part of this larger quad, then that tiny narrow stair, it feels like it's a regular staircase at this point. It doesn't feel like it's this long, you know, I mean, I could imagine, you know, you could set up a queue and people could just sort of wait to try and sit at those moments on the stair. Like, I don't understand why that staircase isn't this sort of like long, broad public thing that happened in some of your diagrams. So, yeah, and it's, I mean, I understand that there's a certain amount of, so like even, I mean, you had mentioned about Steelcase and how they, you know, they just want you to buy all their furniture, which I think in some ways could potentially be a good move just because we have to design buildings that are flexible over time. But I think that there's very like potentially small details that we could do along these sort of Pietro Belushi outside corners by like offering benches, or even on the second floor offering some sort of like built-in like counters that overlook, I mean, again, I'm sure it's a nightmare,
Sure.
but like, something that allows you to be on the second floor and inhabit that edge of the balcony overlooking, that's not just like, oh, I'm gonna look down. No, I can set up, I can be a part of this thing, because I just feel like if there's thousands of students here and the classrooms are, 60-person classrooms, and, it's a wonderful sort of new way of teaching in these really sort of large groups of people, but we have to be collaborative, and we'll have furniture to do this. I'm just worried that some of these like circulation spaces might come off as just being kind of like airport waiting rooms, unless they have this extra amount of architecture that allows you to like inhabit those edges in meaningful ways that would potentially be based on their adjacency to a classroom or a balcony edge
Sure.
or whatever that. So.
Yeah, no, I think, I think we would furnish these, and you could put a laptop on it, and you could pull a stool up to it, and, otherwise it's a shopping mall. So I think we could activate those spaces, and I think that's a good point. In the next stages, we'll be looking for ways to do that.
Not to keep hammering on the stair, but just kind of thinking of the building as the Part T. You have the special stuff, even as you put it, you said all the classroom stuff is in the bar, and then the fun stuff, the special stuff, that's what occupies the quad and occupies this curved object. The stair itself is that special object, yet it leads you to the, for lack of better words, the boring bar, the classroom bar. It almost seems as though the stair wants to lead you to the second floor activity that's happening within the special zone, these teaching, learning types of spaces. The section which I think is a very beautiful section, it's just a stair kind of coming in and meandering through the building. I feel like it doesn't quite happen at this, because if that was to happen, then that special stuff would follow and flow up that stair, up to the higher zones of the building, which it does not. It's very much the bar and kind of the special object attached to it. So if that stair is special and the stair is supposed to lead you to something also special, it almost seems like it wants to lead you up to the second floor of the special stuff, which sort of brings up these axes again.
Okay.
It's pretty much at that juxtaposition. So what if it was like rotate at 90 facing the south entry, still addresses the west, Project South here, and then you come up, you're literally at that crossroads between if you go left at the top of the stair, which would be down in this plan, you enter that special stuff. If you go right, you go to the classroom. That sort of, it's the middle ground between those two.
Yeah, run the stair this way.
Right.
Yeah.
But then when you arrive here, you see.
You kind of soften it like you're doing from that south entry rendering, where it kind of starts to open up.
Yeah, mirror the stair.
Right, but I think we're taking that special stuff, and I'm assuming you're talking about student success. I think we've made a decision to put that stuff on showcase out in the front of the building and celebrate it in that way. And the stair, I mean, this is a teaching building. This is like going to be their largest classroom building on campus. So it's pretty significant, ascending to these very new high-tech classrooms that they've never, that they don't teach in now. I think
So
that-
to them, those are special spaces.
But they're also existing on the ground plane. So the landing at that stair on that second floor, what's happening when it addresses you isn't any different than what's on the ground floor. The classrooms, they are special, yes, but they're happening on the ground and the second floor. So arriving up to that point on the stair, it's not anything special or new to me.
Like the second floor has no sense of,
There's
I've
no
arrived.
there's no anchor at the top of the stair. There's the classrooms, yes, but it doesn't need to be a special stair to arrive to classrooms which also exist on the ground floor and the third floor as well. That second floor landing there isn't anything there right now that makes that the moment. That's why you go up the stair.
So Nick, are you actually thinking that you would want some of the special stuff from the first floor to move up to the second floor?
I think I would just want the stuff that you're purposely putting on display for the quad, that's why I'm going up the stair. And then from there, I could also function in the classroom part as well. It's a very disjointed sentence, I know, but I'm sort of thinking out loud as I'm saying this. And
Well, to that, I
I've
just
stared
want
at
to
this for a
add to
month or
that,
two.
that some of the students aren't, let's say they're not necessarily, we're trying to walk that line between, you know, you're going to the Student Success Center, okay, you know, you really need some help, you know, so we're trying so, yeah, right, so we're trying to kind of, you know, that was, I don't know that was deliberate in our planning of this, you know, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, there's no way we're going to be reorganizing class, this whole plan at this point, so we'll be mindful of that, right?
Well, that's what I was saying, the stairs don't get to move, it's not the plan.
I think to one of the points that Nick made that I think is a good one is there almost feels like there needs to be some spatial payoff. When I've climbed this stair, this beautiful, elegant stair, I've come in the building with all this energy and I'm going up to
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that was one of the things at Harvard that we didn't do, right? Because you come up to the top and you're like, bam!
Yeah.
You know, the wall.
Smack the surface. Yeah. So as to not repeat that bam moment, it's sort of because you come up and you hit storage, or there's a big tension between the curvilinear part and the bar, and that's I think where time would be well spent to sort of be intentional about that tension. Or even, I mean, the curve that's dashed just page north of the virtual math research, learning research, and it keeps sweeping to the left, but the green line goes straight out. Like there's some of those relationships. I think clarifying those would help lead to that spatial clarity as well.
So I thought we'd talk a little bit more about the site today, but we're in a room full of architects. That's
We can name the space. You go back to the party diagram. There's something just not reading, but this little cut piece in between, I don't feel like that is, I'm not reading that on the exterior or in the plan at all. This little notch sort of in between here. It's almost like it's not really working. It's cutting the curve when it looks like it wants to be continuous, and it's not reading in the plan as well. I wonder if there's some way to, if you're going to interrupt that curve, do it on that east-west sort of plan, north-south axis, so it sort of calls attention to an entry. And if you reorganize some of that sort of unplanned soft seating area into more of a hierarchy, you squeeze a little bit here and give a little more to another spot, there's a way to make it feel like there's a hierarchy to that space. It gives you a little more variety in the size and types, and it gives you more of an entrance point, or gives it a real signature, not signature, sign on the front saying this is the entrance. It's not just underneath this curve that sort of is treating the whole front the same way. And if you want to keep that access, this is an important part of it, because they're kind of both getting mowed, I think.
It seems though that so there's, I mean, the building is quite large. It's got to inhabit multiple people. And that there's this, just because of the sheer depth of the building, there's almost like this formation of the access, just because it's like how people are going to approach the building from the site. So I almost feel like that notch is maybe like a signifier of a time when these things were still sort of, as a party, kind of quite separate, and that it's like, if we have this sort of Pietro Belushi-esque, like really beautiful, overhang, it almost putting in a single sort of signifier that is like, I am the neighbor, doesn't really necessarily make sense. I think it also sort of works against, like what you were saying, the fact that this is sort of this very curvaceous, potentially beautiful, intersecting object, you know, that's being married or united with this more rectilinear form. And so it's, I don't know, it just seems like everything that happens within these circles should in some way, the interior geometries, potentially even difference of materials, should reinforce that, so that like on the floor plans, I think I saw a seminar room that was just, it's kind of like, for lack of, it's almost like a triangle, and I'm wondering if there's ways to sort of just subtly rearrange the walls that they start to sort of march along that facade in like an array that sort of lays out the space much more efficiently. Because I think I also saw on the second floor there's a lot of like potentially wasted circulation space at the exterior, which overlooks the like virtual math reading room or whatever, the virtual math room, you know, on the second floor, and then there's this big sort of circulation space between the front door of that and then the glass wall here, and that overlooks the quad. If the idea is to actually try and like have these things be communicated, that, you know, the students that otherwise, you know, they're gonna sort of see the building and just think like, oh, I'll just struggle at home rather than walking in. I think that like having these things actually pushed out on display, and then also having the interior geometries like begin to align with what the formal characteristics are, then it would make your experience or movement around the building. The rectilinear bar would kind of be like, all right, all the boring like math and lab and like all the classrooms happen in there. I get that, but that like as you're walking around, you know, you're gonna have these sort of this almost like filmic experience of the building and all of these things that are happening on the inside of the building. So I don't know, well, he's gone, but like in plan 2, it seems like the columns on the second floor form like almost like a proscenium or like a scrim or a screens that, you know, I think Steve's right, you can't just like reshuffle all of the interior program a lot, especially if they've seen it a number of times.
One strategy would be to take these and push them to the perimeter.
Exactly.
But then the premier space is privatized essentially. You don't get to it if you're in those rooms. So the idea here was that, you know, this is 16 feet deep, so it's big. There's room to furnish it. It's a real occupiable space. The other alternative would be to push these to the edge, but then you're doing the same thing. You have closed rooms against the most public interior spaces.
But Rob, what will draw people to go to Plan South?
I think just the
The
quiet
view,
and the
the-
appealing
okay.
overlook to the quad.
It's kind of private to, you know,
So like
So
individual
it's a-
people doing work by themselves?
there's a
reading,
variety, it's like
and
more
then-
variety in spaces, in spaces offer.
So Aaron, but you said you wanted the area and this curve to be more, the geometry of it to speak more to the curve, right?
I
Is
mean,
that what you're, sort of what you're
I
saying?
fully support orthogonal straight walls, but it's just sort of rather than having an orthogonal geometry overlaid on top of this curve, like with the curve, just very simply sort of ticking those walls along.
Yeah, we can
And
think about that, Aaron, and maybe that's a good idea. The idea behind this is that you appreciate the curve by having a datum to read it from every time you move through. So I don't know which one the best one is, but that was the thinking behind this version.
yeah, and I think this is similar to on the ground floor, we're having exactly